stick it like that, and you just go here. Oh, hi friends. Welcome to the All Canadian Reptile Girl. I'm Annalise. In today's video, I will show you a couple of new techniques to cover and decorate the glass on your reptile's enclosure. So grab your gloves, which I don't have here with me. So grab your gloves and get ready to channel your inner Ron Swanson and do some building. Let's get started. So last time I showed you how to make a complete naturalistic back panel. If you haven't seen that video, you can watch it here. This is a great method if you have a big enclosure and want to cover a lot of area, or if you want a nice rock-like look and don't want to shell out a couple $100 for a ready-made panel. But as you saw in that video, making a panel by yourself has a lot of steps. Carving, melting, plaster of Paris, painting, paint again, then you have to clear coat, and then you do the touch-ups and you put on your stuffs.
Okay. That's enough of that.
Many of these steps also require hours or even days to let stuff set before you are ready for the next one. I like foam a lot, but today I will show you a few techniques that are a lot quicker and easier and still look really cool. Let's start off with our list of supplies. It's pretty straightforward. Our list contains all of the decorating materials from the last one, so just rocks, bark, and moss, and some dirt. Where'd the dirt go? There's so little. Not a lot of dirt. We might have to get more. Oh, and what else? Oh, well, yeah, sticks and any ledges or something that you'd like to put on. And then there is all of the stuff you need to secure it in place.
And you want to put on 2 or 3 layers of duct tape on this.
No, not duct tape. I'm talking about silicone and Gorilla Glue and spray foam to attach everything we need. Of course, before you start, you need to take a minute or two and plan out how you want it to look, or where you want to place your items. Are you covering a whole wall or just a small part of it? I usually like to leave a little bit of the sides uncovered myself, but you can do whatever you want. Are you going to build in any ledges or shelves? Or are you going to make anything out of spray foam or wood? Or just leave it completely flat? Or are you going to just do little bits of it? That kind of thing. Once you have your plan in mind, tip your enclosure on its end if you can, as this really helps things stay in the place you want them to be while you are securing it. For this side, I'm going to have a bit of a lumpy texture, and we'll secure this little branch that will extend across the whole thing right over here. Like that. And I'm going to secure it with spray foam. So the first step is for you to put in some spray foam to build up your topography and secure your branches. We need this on its side. Now, this stuff expands quite a bit, and how much will depend on the type of foam that you are using. High expansion, low expansion, even by brand. I personally really like this brand of tight foam because, well, the foam is tight. And when you carve it, you don't end up with really big bubbles or voids in it like you would with most other foams. But any brand you get will be perfectly fine, as long as it sticks. From Bryce Broom, though I did modify the technique a little bit and it works like a charm. After your foam is in for a minute or two, mist it with a bit of water, and this actually speeds up the curing and allows you to mold it as it cures. Wait a couple more minutes after you mist it with the water, and then you can actually mold your foam into shape without getting it all over your hands and it sticks on you, and if it does get on your hands, don't get it wet. Just want to say that really quickly. It won't come off for at least a week. You get some on your hands, you let it dry. Don't try to wash it off. Okay. Now, before you mold it, after you put on your spray, just give it a poke test first, just to make sure it doesn't stick to you. And then you're good to go. Okay, so this looks amazing. We are going to let this all set and dry, and then we'll come back and decorate it tomorrow. Now, if you put in a little bit too much of the foam, it's okay. It's gonna expand a bunch. You can just trim it back. So I might have to do a little bit of trimming. We'll see how much this changes from now till tomorrow, but I really like this love seat here. It's so much fun to poke. All right, we'll see you tomorrow. Well, I'll see you tomorrow. I'll see you tomorrow. And we're back. I've already trimmed this down and it was getting a little bit out of control and expanding quite a bit, so I already took care of trimming that down. But now we need to cover all this. And I'm going to be using Gorilla Glue over here and silicone, just to show you the difference between the two types of adhesive. For both methods, this is just pretty much the same three-step process of putting the adhesive on any items and fastening and placing it in the enclosure, then applying your adhesive to the entire area, and lastly covering it all with substrate. Obviously you don't want the silicone or glue or foam to be visible, so make sure that you push the substrate into your adhesive and check around all of your decor items from all angles so you don't have to come back and add the additional step of covering up any visible adhesive once it's set. Believe me, it's a hassle. Having made this mistake myself, I strongly suggest that you use way more dirt than you think you will need while the silicone or the glue or whatever you're using is still wet. Just whatever doesn't stick will fall off, so don't worry about using too much. So let's start with the silicone. We will be doing the top half here with the silicone, and then we will be doing the bottom half with the Gorilla Glue. Now, make sure that you get 100% silicone, nothing with any anti-mold or mildew ingredients. You can usually get it in different colors. I usually use a dark brown or black so that if any does show through, it's not as visible against the dirt as a white or clear. The advantage of silicone is that it is significantly cheaper than Gorilla Glue, especially if you get it at Restore. I talk about that in my Hobbs build. You can watch that here. And it's more viscous, so it tends to stay in one spot a lot better and is better at holding the heavy stuff down or in place while it sets. The downside is that it stinks and it takes a lot longer to set. To apply, it's just very easy. You just loop it everywhere and then you kind of smear it out, and then you dump on your substrate, Eco Earth today for me, and then you pat it in. All right. Let's see me do it. So I should have mentioned this earlier. Make sure to leave a strip for your lights. I forgot to mention that before, like I said, but we will be putting lights along here and all the way around the sides and the front. So just make sure that you have room for that. All you gotta do is just put tons in and then work fast. And you just move it around. So right here, I can't actually get to it because that's glued against the glass, but we will be painting it a little bit with like a black chalk paint, so it's okay if you miss stuff that's against the glass. If you get it in a place where it is unwelcome, you can just scrape it off the glass, or you can cut it out of your foam, or whatever you need to do. Once it sets, it won't be able to be scraped. Before it sets, it'll just kind of be smeared. Make sure you get it in all the tiny little cracks and underneath the lips of the foam and just everywhere. When you're putting in the rocks, make sure to use a lot of silicone. It might look like a ridiculous amount, but trust me, it is a necessary amount. Alright, and now let's just put a little bit of moss up at the top. Maybe like, you gotta really push it in. Once it's all spread out, you're just gonna wanna look and make sure that there are no thin spots, or if there are, that you can cover them, just to make sure you don't miss anything. It's chocolate syrup, don't eat the silicone. Put your dirt right where you first started, because it is going to be the first to start drying, and you're really going to want to get advantage of that still wet silicone. And like we said earlier, put all of the dirt. Now I did get a little bit of silicone up on our backing rock face here, so I'm just going to put a little bit of dirt on that too. And I did it a little bit on here too, I know that, so I'm just going to squish it back in there. Okay, we're going to just let this set here, and then we will be doing the same thing with the Gorilla Glue on the bottom. Oh, wait, one more thing, sorry. While I'm gone, and this would really help me out, why don't you take half a second and give that little thumbs up button a little click, just a little click. Only if you like what I'm doing. If you don't like what I'm doing, I don't know why you're still watching, but thank you for the view, and you can still just hit the little thumbs down. YouTube actually doesn't differentiate between the two. Did you know that? Thumbs up, thumbs down, all engagement to the almighty algorithm. Weird, right? Okay, so we're back. This is all cured. I went and had some supper, and I finished watching Midnight Mass with my family. Great show, but it's not as scary as the other two series before it, but it's still amazing. Anyways, let's do this section back here with Gorilla Glue. Now, I am going to be using a different substrate. Usually, I would use the same substrate throughout the entire enclosure, but just for the purposes of this video, I will be using a different kind of substrate so that I can show you what it looks like with other substrate types. For example, we used Eco Earth from before, and now we're going to be using this sandy black earth and sand-like mixture here. Now, Gorilla Glue is the less dramatic sibling to the expanding foam, in that it's made of basically the same stuff, but just a lot quieter and more predictable and less likely to get all up in your business. Just like the spray foam, it has very little odor and sets very quickly, which I think are its main advantages over silicone. Water also accelerates the curing process, but can cause some pretty neat things to occur. This can be an advantage or a drawback depending on whether you knew it was a possibility or what to do to manage it or not manage it while it's happening. Just like with the silicone, you just apply this where you want the coverage and smear it all about to make sure it gets everywhere it needs to be in all the little cracks and bubbles and crevices. If it does get into places you don't want it to be, just like with the silicone, it's okay, you can scrape it off later once it all sets. Once you've got it where you like it, just put on the substrate. Like I said, I'm using a different kind right now, and just make sure that you pack it in. Now, this substrate has some moisture in it, which, if there was enough water, will react with the glue and might cause it to swell, and this can give you some really cool, surprising shapes. But it can also expand beyond what your substrate is able to cover, and you could end up with gaps. There are two things that you can do here. You can add more substrate after it's kind of done its expanding, but before it stops being sticky, timing with that can be tricky.
Well said. Wasn't that well said, Zoe?
Had a kind of poetry to it, sir.
Or you can mold this as it expands and push the rising lumps down. Basically, the important thing is to keep an eye on it while it sets so you don't have any surprises. Okay, so we've got everything placed where I want it to be. It's all covered with substrate and everything looks good for now. So we will leave it, but we will be coming back and checking on it just to make sure there are no surprises and nothing crazy happens. Though I suspect it might expand back there, right here especially, but we'll see what happens. So just leave it for the amount of time that is appropriate for the glue that you used, and then you just tip your enclosure back up and reveal what it looks like. It's very exciting. So once that's done, I'm going to show you a new technique to cover your walls that might just be the fastest and easiest way to cover them, and I'm really excited about that. So don't go anywhere. I'm back. As you can see, we've switched sides and this is flipped up, but it looks amazing. Now, there are a couple of dirt pimples that have been caused by the Gorilla Glue, but we can touch those up later, and as far as I'm concerned, this looks amazing. So overall, I'm happy with this, and I think it looks great. Now it's time to do the other side. So I've used the same technique to put in some spray foam on here, just the same technique as we used up here. And then all you have to do is apply your adhesive to the area that you want covered, and then apply this mat of cocoa fiber fiber that I've already cut to size on top. You can get this at your garden center or even get hanging baskets of the stuff to put your plants in at the dollar store. One thing though that you have to keep in mind when you're using this as a technique is it kind of is only good for small, close to the glass things, and it doesn't mold very well over bigger shelves. So that's the only issue that I'm seeing with it, but other than that, it's a really easy and quick technique. You just drape it over your adhesive and then press it down to make sure it's all glued all over, and then you sprinkle some dirt on top because this is porous and the glue does poke through, as my dad learned the hard way just earlier this morning. So the dirt will kind of help cover up any glue that does go through and any gaps that might appear, and then you just put a little bit of extra dirt on the seam and voila, it's on! Once this was set, I removed the rocks and knocked off the dirt and went back to shape it with a blade and trimmed back any areas that I wanted open or that just weren't glued properly. You could leave this side as is, or you could go back and glue some more decor on this afterwards if you want. I just put a couple of little bits on to demonstrate, a little rock and a piece of bark, but you can do whatever. And honestly, if you want a very quick and clean way to make a backdrop, it's hard to beat this technique, I think. Especially if you're going to do it on flat glass without any shelves or anything underneath it. It would be just so quick and easy. It's a great technique, honestly. Now, it looks good enough with the back, but overall, it's a little incongruent with the appearance of the other side and this. I wouldn't normally mix and match looks like this on a normal build, but you know, the idea here was to show different techniques that you could use for your builds. But even though it doesn't really all match, I'm very pleased with how all of these turned out. But tell me what you think. Did you like it? Did you learn something new? Maybe a new technique that you want to try out? Or perhaps you're feeling like you now have the know-how to give your enclosure a facelift? Or would that be glass lift? Let me know that too in the comments below. In the third and final video of this build, I will be showing you how to set up your own bioactive enclosure and maybe even move some little snuggies in here once it's all done so that we can see how they like the project. Hit that bell so you know as soon as that goes live. Thanks for watching, and until next time, remember to nurture all nature. Bye! Runnier. This is more the consistency of maple syrup. Most Canadian thing I've ever said.
I win!
Aww. In today's video, we will be continuing with yar with yar do-it-yourself. Yar. You go, buddy. All right. Can you see me?
No.
Yeah.
Now I can.
No. I'm hidden.
Has anyone ever told you you're a weird kid?
I'm not a kid, I'm a tank.